Welcome to the Darnell and Cody show. Today's topic is Yang or bust. If Yang loses, what's our option? And in my opinion, it really comes down to damage control. Who are we going to pick as our second option if Yang doesn't make it, God forbid? And to me, that's Bernie Sanders. Because while Yang is the cure for all the problems that we face in modern day America, Bernie Sanders is at least the other candidate that's at least addressing the symptoms. He's the bandage where Yang is the antibody, the antibiotics to fix the illness that's plaguing our nation. And that's the only realistic option I see for the Democratic Party. A lot of people talk about electability. I don't see that with Biden. I don't see that with Pete because I don't see a difference between Pete and Biden and Hillary Clinton. I don't see them beating Donald Trump. Whereas if you look at Yang and Sanders, at least they have the capability to pull Trump supporters, to pull libertarians, to pull moderates. But of course, given the choice between the two, I see a lot of flaws with Sanders' policies. But like I said, if it's Yang or bust, and if Yang loses, it's damage control, and you got to go with Sanders. What are your thoughts on this, Cody?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to kind of think about this after Yang did not qualify for the last debate, where it was starting to look like Yang really wasn't getting the polling that he needs in these early states like Iowa and stuff like that. He's kind of at 5% right now, so we can maybe estimate he might be at 10% when he's typically underpolled. But unfortunately, in a state like Iowa, you need 15% in certain districts in order to even have your votes count for the entire vote in the caucus. So if you're polling at 5 and you're realistically around 10%, it's starting to look a little bit grim. And I'm not saying this as if he's totally out of the race. Obviously, me and Darnell fully support Yang and hope that he makes it all the way through. But we're starting to realize that it's good to at least have a second option on the table when you're looking at this diverse of a field right now where there's still a lot of candidates in the race. And I agree with Darnell where Bernie obviously has the right diagnosis, at least when he looks at the issues facing the country. You could even listen to the last debate last Tuesday, and a lot of the candidates were focusing on Donald Trump again, talking about how he pulled them out of X, Y, and Z deals with X, Y, and Z other countries or with different groups in America like farmers. But at the end of the day, that isn't the main focus. It might be an issue with some American people and maybe even a lot of American people, but it's not the main priority that people want to hear about when they're listening to these debates, which is why honestly they're getting such lower viewership in the first place. More and more so. I mean, the first debate had more viewership than the fifth one, so it's not a good look for the Democratic Party. And the reason for that is that they keep trying to focus on the issues that, at the end of the day, the American people don't really care about. And Bernie Sanders, like Yang, obviously Yang has superior ideas and a better diagnosis of the issues at whole. Um, Bernie realizes that these issues exist, and he does have a way to, address a lot of these issues, especially the inequality that's happening, and how even to this day people are trying to work like 60 to 80 hours just to make meager wages to scrape by when other people are having 10 houses and 3 yachts that they can go wherever they want on the planet on. And that kind of inequality is what Bernie at least is aware of and has a way to address. And this is the kind of real revolution that this country needs. It's not just the mild reforms, just basically the same old politics that Obama and Hillary Clinton were running on. And like Darnell said, at the end of the day, I don't see other candidates being able to beat Donald Trump for that exact reason. If you're not trying to address the problems that most Americans are concerned about. Forget about what the media is saying. Most Americans are concerned about paying their next paycheck, making sure that their kids can go to the hospital when they are injured, making sure that they can get their cars repaired, making sure that they have jobs and schools that their kids can go to. These are the concerns Americans have. They don't care about what Donald Trump is doing at the end of the day. And until people start addressing the real concerns of the American people, Bernie Sanders and Yang are the only two real options. And even if they do start addressing these issues, unless they have a real solution for them instead of just status quo politics, then like we both have said, Bernie is the real pick here.
Right. I mean, to me, Donald Trump is, like Yang says, a symptom of the problem. Let's be honest, what has he really done that's so detrimental that it's making my life worse? He affects my life minimally, as far as I'm concerned. I know he's done, bad things internationally. He has bad foreign policy. You can, list many things that he's done bad, like the trade deals, whatever you want to go on about. But to someone with, to most people, to most Americans that have a mindset of scarcity right now, which they rightfully do have when most of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, imagine just literally saying, if I lose my job today, I can't afford to keep my home tomorrow. I can't afford to pay for my car. I can't afford to pay for food. I mean, that's a bleak out view on life. When we were living in supposedly the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the country. I mean, how much optimism, how much care do we really have for things outside of ourselves when that's our reality in front of us? So that's what Yang is addressing, and that's what I feel like Sanders is trying to address. But the biggest problem I have with these quasi-socialist policies is that they tend to try to advocate outcome or equality of outcome or outcome of quality, and to me, that's just not far from realistic, just basically inherently false way of looking at how we should approach life. Everyone is different. Everyone inherently has different values, different outlooks, different skills, different motivations. We shouldn't try to equate everybody and saying that everyone deserves the same thing. We all deserve the same rights as human beings. We all have the same values as human beings in the terms that we are all human beings. But try to say that everyone should have the same amount of money, everyone should have the same amount of intelligence, everyone should have the same amount of power. It's just not that's what communism tends to become, or tends to try to advocate. But we know that's not the real life. That's not reality, and that's why capitalism, despite all its flaws, is the way that society and the world at large functions. Because as horrendous as it sounds, greed and selfishness is the way the world operates. And you have to be able to harness that. And you have to be able to use that to fix the problems, rather than saying that that is the problem. Saying that human nature is the problem isn't going to fix human problems. So what Yang is saying with the freedom dividend is saying that, look, let's share on some marginal level the wealth of the nation. I mean, $1,000 for every human. $1,000 is not a lot of money a month. That's $12K a year. That's nothing to a billionaire. If you give Jeff Bezos $12K a year, that's nothing to him. That's chump change. But to the marginal American, like the common American person, that's huge. To me, that's huge. To me, a $12K a year bonus changes my life. It changes changes my options, changes what I can do, changes my feelings about job security, about what I'm doing. And it opens up so much more things to me. And that's what is so optimistic about Yang's proposal to me. Whereas Sanders, a lot of his proposals are big picture, and I can get behind them on an ideological level. I can get behind them conceptually. But in terms of application, the federal jobs guarantee seems like a ludicrous plan to me. It's basically saying that we'll make a job for you. I mean, regardless of whether there is a need for the job, we'll find something for you to do so you can do it. That's equating my human value to the work I can do. And I feel like that's what the goal tends to become. It's like, well, you're defined by the work that you do. No, I mean, I can work for a lot of different things. I don't have to be defined by my capital value in the marketplace. I don't need the government to make jobs for me because I need to be doing something productively, capital wise, to find meaning in my life. I feel like that's a very bleak outlook, not just for the country, but for humanity, for who we are as individuals. And that's why Yang's message resonates so much for me when he says humanity first. It's not saying that, oh, college should be free because everyone should go to college and everyone should be educated. Well, no, maybe not everyone should go to college. Maybe everyone doesn't want to go to college. Maybe there are things and there are life choices and life paths that can be just as fulfilling without having to go to college. And guess what? The stats and statistics tend to point to that direction. That's the reality that we live in. Most college graduates don't even get a job that their degree is majored in, or much for that matter, they don't even get a job that requires a college degree. So what are we saying when we're offering free college for 30% of the population, which is what's been historic? So we have 30% of the population going to college, and now we're saying that we're going to make that free for 30% of the population. We're going to spend all this money to make that free for them, when people that go to college aren't even the most impoverished people in this nation. They aren't the ones that need the most help. What about these people that are literally starving on the streets? What about the people that are defecating on the streets, sleeping on the floor, covered with heroin needle? Like, what are we doing for these people? I mean, we're saying that our priority is free college over helping these people living on the streets. It seems like a ludicrous idea for me that Sanders is proposing, that we gotta have free college. We gotta absolve student loan debt. I have student loan debt. I think it's a stupid idea to get absolved that just because it's good for me doesn't mean it's good for the country. And I think people have to get in that mind state where we have to all agree that we're moving for humanity, we're moving for America. We gotta do what's best for the nation, not for me. That's that me mind state, that scarcity mindset is what's gotten to this mess to begin with. And I think Yang is the only one that's really looking at how it's gonna benefit everyone. What's the most responsible and fair, equal way to help everyone equally, and that's the freedom dividend, and that's where it starts. He's not ending there. And I love his point. He always says the freedom dividend isn't the end game. It's just the basic frame. It's the groundwork on which we build our future. And I love that message. I see so much optimism in it. I see such a brighter future. I don't get that same passion. I don't get that same energy. I don't get that same vision from Sanders, from Warren, from Biden, from anybody in the Democratic Party. And that's why it's Yang or bust for me. It really is. But being a realist, if Yang doesn't get the nomination, I think, being realistic, we got to get this Trumpster out of the office. I'd have to go for Sanders. What are your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I agree with you on your initial assessment there. Obviously, that Yang is like far superior than Bernie, but I don't have such a bleak outlook when I look at Bernie's overall, uh, I guess, campaign. The federal jobs guarantee I have major issue with, just for the fact that, again, as you said, it puts a value on basically humanity in a certain extent. So it's saying $15 is humanity's value, $15 an hour. But at the end of the day, at least it recognizes that overall right now people are completely underpaid in lower paying jobs that are seeing their CEOs, have millions and millions of dollars. Forget about billions of dollars like Jeff Bezos. He's actually paying his employees somewhat well, although they're getting hurt, and there's major issues with even bathroom breaks within Amazon right now. That's a whole nother issue. It's these jobs where these millionaires that are originally small businessmen, like Papa John, the guy that owns Papa John's is a great example. I forget his name, but it's John something, obviously. And he has millions and millions of dollars. He was talking about how if they raised the minimum wage to even $12 an hour, he would have to fire thousands of his employees. Well, guess what? The guy owns 3 mansions, and he also has a private airline on his property with a jet in it. So maybe he could sell one of his houses instead of having to fire thousands of people. And this is the kind of greed that Bernie is diagnosing, where, as you say, obviously greed is a driver for capitalism, and Bernie, in my opinion, isn't trying to remove greed from the equation. He's just trying to even the playing field a little bit at least. And it's not as good of a way to do it as Yang's solution, but at least it's still giving people a foothold in the economy. It's saying, hey, if some corporation isn't going to pay you X, Y, and Z to live your life in, $15 an hour. $15 an hour, if you get paid $15 an hour, in most places you're going to be okay. If you get paid $15 an hour in New York City or even in DC, you probably aren't going to be okay. And this is another issue that he hasn't really addressed. And this is an issue me and Darnell have talked about where the minimum wage shouldn't be just a flat federal thing. It should be adjusted not just on a state level, but on a local living expense level where certain areas are far more expensive in certain states than other areas within that state. So it just doesn't make any sense to say that everyone can earn $15 an hour despite their living expense. And that is a huge problem that Bernie is going to come upon. I guarantee that this is going to become an issue if this plan is implemented, if he becomes president. But another thing that this federal jobs guarantee has a problem with is overall worker incompetence, to be honest. We all have worked with a terrible employee who is like calling out sick or maybe shows up to work like every day an hour late. What are you going to do with those people if they're guaranteed a federal job under their this is a human right to have this federal job according to Bernie Sanders' plan. And I'm not trying to rag his plan because I think it's a lot better than everybody else's plans besides Yang's. And maybe Tulsi Gabbard, Tom Steyer might have a better idea. I honestly don't know. I haven't read up enough on Tom Steyer yet. We'll do a podcast on him versus Yang soon. But at the end of the day, Bernie at least is trying to address these issues, and basically they're band-aids. Darnell might have more to add to this, but at the end of the day, they're not going to end the problems that we all know exist. They're going to help, though, in my opinion. And that's why I don't fear that he's going to destroy capitalism or turn us into some kind of completely communist society. He's just trying to level a playing field, add value to people, and maybe it's an incorrect approach to adding value to people, but at least it's a start, and it's better by far than what the other candidates in the field, including Donald Trump, are offering. So, do you have anything to add there, Darnell?
I mean, I definitely agree with your sentiment. I don't think we can ever bring into question Bernie's motivations or intentions. I think he is genuinely a caring person. He wants what's best for America. But that could be said for so many politicians. That could be, a blanket statement on any politician, really. They all want what's best for America. So we have to really talk about the merits. We have to really talk about what's the merits of their policy and what's their vision. How are they going to bring prosperity and get rid of this mindset of scarcity? And I think, and you agreed, that basically Sanders has a poor policies, poor approach to solving this problem that we have in this nation. And basically the mindset of scarcity, which is such a poignant term for how we describe modern day America, is how Trump won the election to begin with. He frankly says, what did Hillary Clinton say about America? America's already great. What did Donald Trump say? Make America great again. So you have this two different mindsets where, Hillary and her, multi-million, castle is just saying, oh, well, everything's great. America's great. Everyone's happy. Everything's fine. It's already great. Whereas you have Trump saying, well, no, it's not great. We're going to make it great again because, there are people losing jobs. There are, coal miners losing their job. There are manufacturers losing their jobs. And that's the message that both Yang and Sanders and Trump are all tackling. That's where this voting demographic is split, because like I said, Sanders polls Trump voters, Yang polls Trump voters, and it's vice versa. I mean, when we say we're polling Trump voters to our side, to the Democratic side, basically what we're saying is that some of those people went to Trump. So we lost states in the last election that were Democratic states to the Republicans because our message as the Democratic Party wasn't resonating with the people. And I think that is being addressed by both Sanders and Yang. But the intention, the motivation isn't enough. We have to really look at the policy. And I really don't see how, like you said, federal job guarantee, minimum wage of $15 works. Free college, getting rid of college debt, the Green New Deal. I don't see how these are gonna make America prosper, especially without thorium, which is what Yang is talking about. So basically, Yang or bust for me is basically what I'm saying. Because every issue I see, Yang is the superior version of what Sanders is advocating. Sanders would have been a great candidate for 2016. He should have gotten the nomination over Hillary. He didn't. And now we have a better candidate, and I think it'd be foolish for us to not push him and try to get him into office. But like I said, Yang or bust. If it's bust, we got to do damage control. We got to go for the least amount of damage. And I agree with you that that's probably going to be Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I at least agree there. And obviously, Yang is, like I said, he has by far superior ideas. But I wanted to shift the topic now over to the DNC, the recent polling changes, and how Yang didn't qualify for the last debate, the first one he didn't qualify for. And so the DNC ended up changing the rules after the last December debate to raise the stakes. Basically, you needed to poll slightly higher than you were previously in order to qualify for the debate. And they only held about, I think it was like 30 polls between the last two debates, in comparison to typically they hold about 25 polls that they consider qualifying every single month. So that was about like 12 polls in the last 2 months, and 25 in total. And Iowa, for instance, hadn't had a single poll in 50 days before the debate, which was an early state, which you typically try and poll more, and it actually had more power in the qualifying thing. If he had gotten 5% in Iowa, then it would have been a qualifying poll. So he ended up only getting 2 polls because the DNC literally decided, hey, we're going to up the stakes. Basically all the candidates that they already want to be in the run, in my opinion, and by the way that the media is portraying this, Amy Klobuchar, who's barely even in the race right now, had already qualified for this upcoming January debate. So they were comfortable with raising the stakes up to the point where she had already qualified, but Yang and Tom Steyer had not. And Tulsi Gabbard is also a notable mention there, although she probably wouldn't have showed up if she had qualified anyway. So they ended up raising the stakes. Tom Steyer is a billionaire, so he's able to pay millions of dollars. I think he paid like $50 million in Iowa alone, and he was able to qualify. Yang doesn't have that kind of money. He's raising a grassroots fund. He got $16 million last quarter, which is by far outdoing expectations, and his last quarter, which did outdo expectations already. But yet that's not enough money to just buy your way onto stage like Tom Steyer can. So he didn't qualify. And to me, this is starting to highlight DNC error. And DNC has had massive problems in the history, and it goes way back into when FDR was president, and I can talk about that another time. But we all saw with 2016 how they outright just did Bernie dirty, and they literally were giving questions to Hillary Clinton's campaign in advance. And so she was more prepared than Bernie would be during these debates, where it was just between the two of them. It was honestly a joke. And the DNC really, in my opinion, hasn't learned a single thing from their error in uh, this past that they've had, this troubled past. And they continue to pick terrible moderators. I mean, they pick the channel. They don't pick the moderator, but they pick these terrible channels like CNN. They say Fox is too biased to be able to hold a DNC debate, but then they have CNN do these moderators that ask loaded questions to Bernie Sanders, where they ask him if he told Elizabeth something, and then they literally just ask Elizabeth in the next sentence, how did you feel when Bernie had said that after he denied it? Literally becoming a surrogate for Elizabeth Warren's campaign at that point, and just gross propaganda for her campaign, gross, just uh, terrible reporting. It was honestly like people laughed because of how uncomfortable the questioning was when the debate was being held for that circumstance. And all throughout this cycle, we've seen how Yang, Tulsi, even Tom Steyer, sometimes even Bernie, they don't get as much speaking time as other candidates who the DNC and the media especially, but the DNC, in my opinion, is kind of they might say they're impartial, but in my opinion, they're shadowing this in some way. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just the media, but either way, there's obviously something happening here where Yang has like 5 minutes of speaking time, and then Elizabeth Warren has 20 minutes of speaking time, or Amy Klobuchar even has like 18 minutes of speaking time. There's been a blatant blackout for Yang. They've shown like the wrong picture of Andrew Yang. They've called him John Yang. Even Tulsi Gabbard, they had the wrong picture. They showed Kristen Gillibrand, or whatever her name was that used to be running, instead of Tulsi's picture on a graph. I mean, the media is so incompetent at this point. They don't even know which candidate is running, apparently, and they don't have any idea about what policy they're running. And it's just a blatant, obvious move, in my opinion, um, by the establishment Democrats, these media cats that basically live in their echo chamber of DC. They just listen to what other rich people are saying around them, and they don't really understand at all what the American people are upset about, which is why they're so poorly equipped to understand even their own failings and acknowledging their own failings. Like their viewership has declined dramatically. Internet news is growing. Joe Rogan's doing better than CNN right now by far. So this is a telling sign, and they don't even want to realize it or acknowledge it. They have no idea what's happening around them, despite the fact that they're losing money over it. It's just deafening to me how clearly the establishment Democrats don't want the status quo to change. They need this greed take all economy that Yang and Bernie Sanders are talking about and warning people about that exist. They want this to continue at all costs. And this is what, honestly, Obama continued, the greed take all economy. Hillary Clinton wasn't going to change a thing about it. And this is why they didn't like Bernie back in 2016 either. Because they knew that if you change what is the status quo right now in terms of the economy, they're going to lose their power. And that is the last thing they want. And that's why they're fighting this so hard. And that's why, in my opinion, if we don't support Yang in this, who else is getting treated improperly by the media? It's people like Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders. The people who are being treated poorly by the media are the ones who we should be supporting, because those are the ones who are going to defeat the status quo that has ruined our country for so long.
Right, and I agree with that. I feel like there's incompetence all around, and like you said, it might be sort of a conspiratorial thing to say that the DNC or the media is all in on it. But I mean, it feels like more and more that that's the case. That the politicians are bought and sold for, the corporations are bought and sold for, the media are bought and sold for. And who are buying these people? Who are buying the political capital and social capital of the nation? It's the people in power. And it's like it sounds very conspiratorial. It sounds very vague. We can just say like, oh, the 1% or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. Like it sounds very cliche almost, because we always try to blame all the blame on this invisible group that we don't really know exactly who they are, but this group, right? The banks, the Wall Street people, the whatever you want to call them, the corporatists. But it's the reality that we live in. It does seem more and more like that the American people's voice and the voice of the media, the voice of the DNC doesn't reflect the people. So the DNC doesn't reflect the voice of the Democrats. The media doesn't reflect the voice of the people. So what do we have to deduce? We have to deduce that these organizations aren't for the people. These organizations aren't representing the people. So it's up to us. It's up to us to really stand up and make a difference. And I'm a realist, but I don't believe in reality, so to speak. And what I mean by that is that we have agency. We have the power to influence reality. We don't have to submit to it. So right now we have a choice to actively make a difference. We can say, I'm not going to fall for the narrative. I'm not going to fall for the propaganda. I'm not going to fall for your false agendas. We're going to rise up and we're going to do what we can to have a voice. And we might lose that battle. And I'm actually, if I was a betting person, I'll bet that we're going to probably lose this battle. I feel like the status quo is going to live on. I feel like the mainstream media is going to win. They're going to control, for the foreseeable future, what the American populace tend to think. It's a losing battle, but it's a battle worth fighting. And I'm going to fight it till the end. Me and Cody both are going to fight it till the end. We're going to speak our minds. And I feel like it's a losing battle, but we're gaining ground. And I feel like a candidate like Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders, for that matter, they're both people that are standing up for us, for people that aren't represented. Because at the end of the day, the ones that are being represented are the corporatists. Me and you don't have the money. We're not spending money on ads. We don't own CNN. We don't own the Washington Post like Jeff Bezos. All we have is a voice. All we have is a YouTube channel. All we have is a little space where we can talk to our fellows. But it's meaningful, and that's what we're gonna do. And I feel like that's where the battle has to take place, whether it's meaningful or not, whether it's gonna make a difference or not, I should say. And I agree with you that the DNC, media, all these things could be blamed. The question to me, I guess, after that would be, what are we going to do about that? And, it could take the form of donations, of course. It could be something as simple as talking to your friends and neighbors, making a little podcast on the internet. But I feel like whatever we can do, we should do. And we shouldn't be disheartened. And anybody can complain. It doesn't take much to complain about the reality of the situation. What takes courage, what takes effort, what takes guts is to do something about it. And I hope that, not just us, we can, of course, I'm not saying that we're doing enough. We should do more too, but I feel like everyone should do more to promulgate the reality that we want to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you know what? I'm hopeful that we're going to see change in that soon, like you said, because we are starting to see people that are speaking from basically the disenfranchised point of view. We're starting to see that speaking out louder and louder, especially the internet, has given people power. Even when the DNC had their debate on Tuesday this Tuesday, immediately after there was massive backlash just how terrible the moderators were, how the DNC or the CNN had blatantly asked Bernie and then gone to Warren about an unfair question. Like, people are calling them out on this and massive amounts of numbers. And so that's a great sign for just our whole movement in general, as people who are wanting to really get back control over, like you said, the corporatists. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to keep shouting and shouting until we're loud enough that they start noticing us. And they're going to start noticing us soon and later, because when these debates don't have any viewership, when no one's watching, and this DNC starts looking towards other people to even host these things because of how terrible the viewership is, I can guarantee you these other channels are going to start noticing as well. And that they're losing money right now. Like I said, they're losing viewership because people are starting to wake up to just how ridiculous all of what they've been selling us is, and how blatant the propaganda is sometimes. And so, like I said, I'm very hopeful right now in this time frame. And even with Yang, I'm hopeful that the internet gang that exists, we're going to be strong enough to turn out for him in a way that is completely unprecedented and unseen, and that the way that the media just is completely doesn't predict right now. So I am hopeful.
All right. And that's all the time we have for today. Hope you enjoyed our podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everybody.